a heartfelt welcome. Today, our conversation will be about how to regain vigor and joy without resorting to heroic efforts or strict limitations. We'll talk about memory, that faithful companion who sometimes starts to let us down, like an old friend who is tired and wants to rest. Have you noticed how sometimes a word is on the tip of your tongue, but it just refuses to jump out? Or you suddenly catch yourself asking the same thing over again, even though you know for sure the answer has already been given? These aren't just annoying little things. Sometimes our own language, our words and phrases, can be the first, barely noticeable signals that changes are happening with our memory, requiring our attention, especially after the age of 67 to 70. Why does this happen? With age, our brain cells, neurons, might work a bit slower. The connections between them weaken, like old telephone wires. The signal gets through, but sometimes with interference. Certain habits, or even a lack of specific substances, can worsen this, like adding fuel to the fire of subtle forgetfulness. But don't rush to get upset. Today, we won't be making diagnoses, but rather learning to be more attentive to ourselves. We will discuss 5 types of phrases or speech patterns that can be early warning bells. By understanding them, you can take timely care of yourself, perhaps adjust your lifestyle, or simply stop blaming yourself for every little thing. I promise, these will be simple and understandable observations without complex terms. And most importantly, knowing these signals will help you maintain clarity of mind and peace of mind for many years to come. Let's watch this video together until the end to arm ourselves with knowledge and self-care. 1. Oh, what's it called? You know, that thing. It's right there. Difficulty finding words. The first warning bell we'll discuss is when it becomes increasingly difficult for you to find the right, even common words. Not the occasional "I forgot," which happens to everyone, but frequent, awkward pauses in conversation. The word seems to lie on the surface of your consciousness. You feel it, almost see it, but you can't grasp it. It's like a butterfly, about to land on your palm, but slips away at the last moment. Remember Arthur, he's 72. He always prided himself on his eloquence, loved telling stories, sprinkling conversations with quotes. Then he noticed that he was increasingly falling silent mid-sentence, trying to recall the name of an object, an actor's name, or a simple adjective. Well, that thing. For flowers, a vase. Such pauses became habitual and very distressing for him. He got angry at himself, felt foolish, especially in company. It seemed to him that his brain was betraying him, that he was losing his main strength, words. He started avoiding long conversations, became withdrawn, afraid of getting into an awkward situation again. Why does this happen? Imagine your brain as a huge library. With age, the librarian, the information retrieval mechanism, can become a bit slower. The index cards are in place, the books too, but finding the right one requires a little more time and effort. This is especially true for proper nouns and names of less frequently used items. This isn't always a sign of a terrible illness. Sometimes it's just a slowdown in information processing. What changed for Arthur? His daughter, noticing her father's distress, gently talked to him. They read together about age-related memory changes. Arthur realized he wasn't alone, and that anger and shame only hindered him. He stopped scolding himself. Instead of panicking during a freeze, he started pausing, taking a deep breath, and trying to describe the object or concept in other words. That thing you put flowers in, and the listener often helped. A vase? He also started reading aloud more and solving crosswords, not as a test, but as training for his brain's librarian. Most importantly, he accepted this change. And you know, the tension disappeared. The pauses became shorter, and if they happened, he could joke about it. He started enjoying communication again. Physiologically, reducing stress improved his cognitive functions, and psychologically, accepting the situation restored his confidence. Practical benefit for you? If you notice this in yourself, don't panic. Try describing the word, use synonyms. Allow yourself a short pause. And remember, this doesn't mean you're becoming less intelligent. It's a signal to be a little gentler with yourself. Be mindful of such moments, but without panic or self-blame. 2. Have I asked this already? I don't quite remember. Repeating questions and stories. The second signal to pay attention to is when you or a loved one starts repeating the same questions or telling the same story multiple times within a short period, completely unaware that it has already been said. This isn't the nostalgic repetition of a favorite anecdote that everyone does sometimes. We're talking about situations where the person genuinely doesn't realize they're repeating themselves. For example, asking, "So, when are the grandkids arriving?" And then 10 minutes later, asking the same question with the same intonation, or starting to recount a recent trip to the store as if talking about it for the first time, even though they just finished the story. Let's remember Eleanor, she's 69. She was always the life of the party, a wonderful storyteller. But her children started noticing she would ask several times an evening what was for dinner, or share the same news about the neighbors. At first, they gently corrected her, "Mom, you already said that." But Eleanor would be genuinely surprised and even offended. "No, I definitely didn't. You weren't listening to me." This created tension. Eleanor herself began to feel insecure, feeling like her words were disappearing into thin air, that she wasn't being taken seriously. She started talking less, fearing she'd put her foot in it again. Why does this happen? Our short-term memory works like a notepad for current entries. For information to move into long-term storage, it needs to be properly recorded and saved. Specific areas of the brain, particularly the hippocampus, are responsible for these processes. With age or due to other factors, stress, lack of sleep, brain changes, this recording mechanism can malfunction. Information simply isn't held long enough for the brain to register. This has already been said, asked. The person genuinely doesn't remember the previous time. It's like a voice recorder with a faulty save button. How was Eleanor helped? Her son read about this and understood it wasn't about his mom being stubborn. He talked to his sister, and they decided to change their approach. Instead of getting irritated or directly pointing out the repetition, they started gently redirecting the conversation or answering the question as if hearing it for the first time, but briefly. They also put up a large message board in the kitchen where they wrote down important plans for the day, guest arrival times, etc. Eleanor started checking it more often, which gave her confidence. Most importantly, they stopped catching her repeating things, surrounding her with warmth and patience. Eleanor relaxed, the tension eased. She didn't stop repeating herself occasionally, but it no longer caused conflict. Psychologically, she felt safe, and physiologically, reduced stress always benefits the brain. Practical benefit for you? If you notice this in yourself or a loved one, be patient. Don't blame. Try using notes, calendars, reminders. It's more important to maintain warm relationships and calm than to prove who is right. This is a call for kindness and understanding towards yourself and others. 3. Now, what was I talking about? I've completely lost my train of thought, losing the thread of conversation. The third type of situation to watch out for is when you find yourself losing the thread of conversation more often. You start telling a story and suddenly, a blank. You stop mid-sentence, unable to remember what you were leading up to, what the conversation was even about. This can happen to anyone, especially if distracted. But if it happens regularly, for no apparent reason, and causes you confusion or irritation, it's a reason to pause and think. It's as if you were walking along a familiar path in the forest of your thoughts, and suddenly it ended, and you're surrounded by unfamiliar trees. Meet George. He's 75. He was always a thorough person, liked to see a thought through to the end. But in the last year or two, he started noticing it was hard for him to maintain attention during a long conversation or story. He'd start explaining something to his son on the phone, then suddenly fall silent and ask confusedly, "Listen, what did we start with?" It completely slipped my mind. Or during a family dinner, telling a story from his youth, he might stop and admit embarrassedly, "I seem to have gotten mixed up. I don't remember where I was going with this." This upset him greatly. He felt incompetent, thought his mind was weakening, and he was becoming a boring old man. Why does this happen? Our working memory is like a computer's RAM. It holds the information we're currently working with. It allows us to follow the flow of conversation, keep several ideas in mind simultaneously. With age, the capacity and speed of this working memory can decrease. Attentional functions, the ability to concentrate and filter out distractions, may also weaken. The brain gets overloaded with information, and the thread of the narrative slips away. It's like a juggler finding it harder to keep several balls in the air at once. One is bound to drop now and then. What solution did George find? He shared his concerns with his doctor during a routine checkup. The doctor reassured him, explaining these are common age-related changes, but advised him to undergo an examination to rule out other causes. The examination showed no serious problems, but mild cognitive decline. George realized he could live with this and adapt. He began consciously speaking a bit slower, giving himself time to formulate his sentences. If he felt the thought slipping away, he wasn't embarrassed to ask the other person, "Hold on, let me gather my thoughts," or "Remind me, where did I leave off?" He also started using a notepad to jot down key points before an important conversation. The main thing, he stopped blaming himself and panicking. He accepted that his brain worked differently and found ways to help it. Both his mood and the quality of his communication improved. Psychologically, he regained control over the situation, and physiologically, calmness and structure helped his brain work more effectively. What does this mean for you? If you catch yourself losing the thread of conversation, don't despair. Try speaking slower. Take pauses. Don't be afraid to ask for clarification or a reminder. Perhaps try simplifying your stories, focusing on the main point. This isn't defeat, it's adaptation. Allow yourself to be imperfect and ask for help when needed. 4. Pass me that thing for the soup instead of ladle, using words incorrectly. The fourth signal is when a person starts mixing up words, using ones that are similar in meaning or sound, but not the correct ones. Or replacing the needed word with something completely inappropriate, sometimes even a non-existent word, often without noticing the mistake. For example, asking for a chair when meaning a table, calling a clock a thermometer, or saying something like, "Water the flowers with that, sprinkler thingy," instead of watering can. These aren't occasional slips of the tongue, which happen to everyone, but a consistent tendency to substitute words, which can hinder understanding. Here's Margaret's story. She's 68. She was always very precise in her phrasing, but her husband started noticing she sometimes said strange things. For example, asking to turn on the cold, meaning the air conditioner, or saying, "Let's go for a walk on the yard," meaning the balcony. At first, he thought she was joking or just tired, but when she called the cat a doggy and didn't notice, he became concerned. Margaret herself wasn't always aware of her mistakes. Sometimes she sensed she'd said something wrong by the listener's reaction, which embarrassed and upset her. She began doubting her words, afraid to speak lest she blurt out something wrong again. Where do such errors come from? Our brain stores words in a complex network where concepts similar in meaning, sound, or category are linked. This is called a semantic network. Imagine it as a city map where streets are words and districts are categories: furniture, animals, food. With age or due to certain brain changes, the connections on this map can become less distinct. The brain takes a wrong turn, so to speak, and chooses a close but incorrect word. Sometimes it might choose a word from the same category, chair instead of table, sometimes one similar in function, sprinkler thingy instead of watering can, and sometimes the connection is not obvious at all. How did Margaret's family handle the situation? Margaret's husband tactfully discussed his observations with her, without criticism or ridicule. They went to a neurologist together. The doctor conducted tests and confirmed mild cognitive impairment. He explained it wasn't the end of the world and gave recommendations. The main thing Margaret's husband learned was patience and understanding. When she used the wrong word, he didn't interrupt her sharply, but tried to understand from the context what she meant and gently prompted, "Did you mean the watering can, dear?" He stopped focusing on the mistakes, concentrating more on the meaning of what she said. Margaret felt supported, and her fear of speaking diminished. She became more relaxed about her mistakes, sometimes even laughing at them herself. Psychologically, this relieved immense tension, and the support of a loved one always positively affects overall well-being. For you, this means, if you notice yourself or a loved one confusing words, approach it with understanding. Try to grasp the essence of what's being said. Don't get hung up on the form. A gentle prompt is better than criticism. And of course, don't ignore this signal. It might be worth consulting a specialist. Show sensitivity. It's key to maintaining mutual understanding. 5. My memory has gotten so bad. I can't remember anything. Increased complaints and anxiety about memory. The fifth important point isn't so much a specific phrase, but the general mood and frequency of comments about one's own poor memory. When a person constantly complains about forgetfulness, expresses strong concern about it, perhaps even becomes irritable or withdrawn when memory or plans are discussed. This might be accompanied by phrases like, "I'm old now, what can you expect? My head is like a sieve, I forget everything, it's awful." It's important here to distinguish between usual complaining and genuinely deep anxiety and fixation on the problem. Listen to David's story. He's 70. He used to be an optimist, but lately, his loved ones noticed he constantly talked about his bad memory. Any minor instance of forgetfulness, where he put his keys, an acquaintance's name, triggered a strong reaction. "See, again, I'll forget absolutely everything soon." He refused new activities, saying, "Why start? I won't remember it anyway." If someone pointed out his forgetfulness, he would either defend himself aggressively or withdraw, looking depressed. His wife saw how this anxiety was exhausting him, robbing him of his joy in life. He stopped reading books, saying he wouldn't remember the plot anyway, and gave up his favorite hobby, model building. Why does such fixation occur? Firstly, the person might genuinely feel their cognitive abilities are declining, causing a natural fear of the future, of losing control and independence. It's the fear of becoming a burden, of losing oneself. Secondly, sometimes such complaints can be a sign of depression, which often accompanies age-related changes or affects memory and concentration on its own. The brain and emotions are closely linked. Constant anxiety itself worsens cognitive functions, creating a vicious cycle. The more you fear forgetting, the worse you remember. It's like carrying a heavy backpack labeled bad memory. It not only weighs you down, but also hinders your progress. What helped David? His wife convinced him to see a doctor, not just a neurologist, but also a geriatrician, a specialist in elderly health. The evaluation revealed moderate age-related memory changes, but also identified symptoms of an anxiety-depressive disorder. David was prescribed not only medication to support brain function, but also mild antidepressants, and psychotherapy sessions were recommended. Working with a therapist helped David understand his fears and accept age-related changes without panic. He learned relaxation techniques, started walking more, and returned to his hobby, but without his previous perfectionism. His wife supported him wholeheartedly, focusing on his successes, not his mistakes. Gradually, the anxiety subsided, and complaints about memory became less frequent and calmer. He didn't start remembering everything perfectly, but his quality of life significantly improved. Physiologically, treating the depression and reducing stress positively impacted his brain, and psychologically, he found hope and tools for self-help. What's the takeaway for you? If you or a loved one constantly talk about memory problems with great anxiety, don't dismiss it. It might not be just old age grumbling, but a cry for help or a symptom of another condition, like depression. It's crucial to take this seriously and seek professional consultation. Don't be afraid to talk about your fears. It's the first step towards overcoming them. Caring for your emotional well-being is just as important as caring for your physical health. 6. What to do if you notice these signals? An important step towards peace of mind. We have discussed 5 types of speech situations that can be early indicators of changes in memory function. These are difficulty finding words, repeating questions and stories, losing the thread of conversation, using incorrect words, and pronounced anxiety about one's own forgetfulness. But the most important thing I want to convey to you now is, noticing these signals is not a reason to panic or give yourself a dire diagnosis. It is a reason for careful and gentle attention to yourself and possibly for seeking timely consultation with a specialist. Please remember, self-diagnosis in such matters can be very harmful. Only a doctor, a neurologist, geriatrician, or sometimes a primary care physician can conduct the necessary examinations, assess the situation comprehensively, and determine the cause of the changes. Problems with memory and speech can be caused not only by age-related changes or the onset of dementia. There are many other, often reversible causes. For example, chronic stress and lack of sleep. They deplete the brain's resources and can lead to forgetfulness and difficulty concentrating. Vitamin deficiencies. Vitamin B12 is particularly important. A deficiency can cause symptoms similar to dementia. Thyroid problems. Impaired thyroid function affects the entire body, including the brain. Side effects of certain medications. Be sure to tell your doctor about all medications you take, including over-the-counter drugs and dietary supplements. Depression or anxiety disorder. As we've discussed, these significantly impact cognitive functions, infections, or other physical health problems. Remember Helen, she's 71. She started noticing many of the signs we talked about, forgetting words, losing her train of thought. She got very scared, read a lot online about Alzheimer's, and had almost given up on herself. But her daughter insisted on a doctor's visit. Imagine her relief when, after an examination, it turned out that the cause of her problems was a side effect of a new blood pressure medication. The doctor adjusted her therapy, and within a few weeks, Helen's memory noticeably improved, and her anxiety disappeared. This story shows how important it is not to jump to hasty conclusions and to trust professionals. Therefore, if you notice one or more of the described signals in yourself or a loved one, especially if they appeared recently and are worsening, do not postpone a visit to the doctor. This is not a sign of weakness, but a manifestation of wisdom and self-care. Early diagnosis is important in any case. If the cause is reversible, you can address it and regain your mental clarity. If it concerns more serious age-related changes, the sooner you start receiving support and treatment, the longer you can maintain your quality of life and independence. Don't remain alone with your fears. Talk to loved ones, consult a doctor. Knowledge is power, and timely action is care for your future. Take this step towards understanding and peace of mind. And so, we've reached the end of our conversation. We touched upon the delicate topic of memory changes that can come with age and learned to recognize some early speech signals. I hope this discussion was helpful for you and, most importantly, didn't frighten you, but rather armed you with knowledge and understanding. Remember, your age is not just a number in a passport. It's a vast wealth of wisdom, experience, joys lived, and difficulties overcome. You have every right to feel good, to have clarity of mind and peace of mind at any stage of life. Noticing changes in yourself is normal. Reacting to them, seeking information, asking for help. This is a manifestation of strength and self-love. Don't scold yourself for forgetfulness. Don't compare yourself to your younger self. Be kinder, more patient, more attentive to yourself, just as you are towards the people you care about. Small steps in caring for your health, both physical and mental, can work wonders. Believe in your strengths, in your ability to adapt and find solutions. Your health and peace of mind are your right and your value. Take care of yourself and be well.